November 25th, 1905. 19-year-old Union College's Harold Moore has just launched himself headfirst into the legs of the opposition. Earlier that day, his doctor had recommended he sit out the game. But this is America's manliest sport, and Harold is no slouch. Seconds later, Harold is buried under a mass of college football's most grizzled athletes. The pile of bodies soon clears, but Harold is still lying face first in the dirt, unconscious. Something has gone terribly wrong. The crowd erupts in anger as police fight to hold them back. Harold's body is dragged off the field and rushed to the hospital. By nightfall, Harold is dead from a massive cerebral hemorrhage. But Harold's death wasn't an isolated tragedy. It was the latest in a national epidemic that was destroying America's youth and threatening to rip America apart. That very same day in Indiana, 18-year-old Carlos Bourne was killed when a tackle drove his own rib through his heart. In Missouri, 16-year-old Robert Brown is paralyzed and later dies from his injuries. By the end of 1905, 19 players had been killed, with over 120 critically injured. Despite the barbarity, hardline football traditionalists argued that the game was necessary to forge young American men into warriors. Elite universities fired back by abolishing the game. The debate became so intense that the President of the United States, Theodore Roosevelt, had to intervene with an ultimatum: fix the game or ban it altogether. So, how did a game so lethal it almost tore the country apart become America's most popular sport? The answer lies in the wild story leading to the invention of a single, highly controversial rule change: the addition of the forward pass. If you like diving into the answers of football history questions like this, hit that subscribe button. This is our first video, with more to come. It's hard to imagine a world where the forward pass isn't a crucial part of the game. So, to understand why its addition led to the radical evolution of modern football, you need to relearn the game from the 1900s rulebook. In the late 19th and early 20th century, the forward pass wasn't just not part of the game. It was illegal. In fact, Walter Camp, the father of American football, viewed, quote, throwing the ball around indiscriminately as a last resort for weak teams, and that the sport should rely on hard work, skill, and strategic planning rather than luck. So if you wanted to advance, you had to run. But different from today, the rules dictated that to get a first down, a team had to gain just 5 yards, with only 3 downs to try. It doesn't sound like much, but without the threat of a pass, defenses didn't need to spread out. They packed all 11 men tightly onto the line of scrimmage, turning every single play into a claustrophobic, grinding ground war. So to break these defensive lines, college teams in the early 1800s invented mass momentum plays. The most famous, the Harvard Flying Wedge, was literally derived from military strategies concocted by Napoleon Bonaparte. In this play, the entire offense would link arms and get a full-speed running start before the ball was even snapped. The result was 2,000 pounds of human bone and muscle piercing a single point of the defensive line at top speed. Unsurprisingly, these plays led to major fatalities, with more than 20 players dying in 1892. The public's outcry over the lethality of mass momentum plays led to rulemakers banning them in 1894. Hardliners fought to keep it, but ultimately relented and approved a new rule stating that no more than 3 men could be in motion before the snap. But the rule change solved nothing. The 1894 ban was just a band-aid on a broken system. Mass momentum plays simply became, quote, mass plays, where wedge attacks continued causing major injuries and death. Plus, the rules made it perfectly legal to push, pull, or drag your own ball carrier forward. It was these kinds of plays that killed Harold Moore. When Harold began his tackle, the force of the entire offense came down on his head. So, with teenagers being crushed to death on the field, why didn't the adults step in and stop it? Because the men in charge didn't see a crisis. They saw a rite of passage. Remember Walter Camp, the father of American football? He was a Yale man, the head of the rules committee, and the sport's ultimate gatekeeper. Camp was the one who invented the line of scrimmage and the system of downs, but he also fiercely defended the game's brutal, grinding nature, and he wasn't alone. You have to understand the mindset of America in 1905. The frontier was closed, and men were moving out of the fields and into factories and office buildings. There was a genuine national panic among the older generations that American men were becoming soft. To traditionalists like Walter Camp, football wasn't just a game. It was a proxy for war, It was a necessary battle designed to weed out the weak and forge young boys into rugged, masculine leaders. Broken noses and bruised legs were a price worth paying. But by the end of the 1905 season, the price had simply become too high. The public was no longer willing to foot the bill. Charles Eliot, the powerful president of Harvard University, publicly declared the sport more brutalizing than prize fighting and pushed to abolish it. Major institutions like Columbia and Northwestern dropped football entirely. It looked like football was headed to the annals of history when a powerful ally of the game stepped in to save it: the President of the United States. Theodore Roosevelt was the ultimate rugged imperialist. He actually loved football, saying, quote, "I believe in rough games and in rough, manly sports. I do not feel any particular sympathy for the person who gets battered about a good deal, so long as it is not fatal. And if he feels any sympathy for himself, I do not like him." Roosevelt's own son was currently playing for Harvard's freshman team and had recently been pulled from a game with a severely smashed face. Hopefully, he didn't feel any sympathy for himself. Roosevelt didn't want the game destroyed. He wanted it saved from itself. So in October of 1905, he summoned the head coaches of Harvard, Yale, and Princeton to the White House. Roosevelt declared, quote, "Football is on trial." It was an ultimatum to Walter Camp and the traditionalists. Clean up the game or see it banned. Preferring to see his beloved football survive, Walter Camp agreed to support changes to the rules, but he'd make sure any changes fit his vision of what football should be. Soon after, 62 schools came together to form the Intercollegiate Athletic Association of the United States, an organization that would eventually become the NCAA. The first order of business? Fixing football. Walter Camp and the traditionalists fought tooth and nail to keep the game a grinding test of brute strength. But a new faction of reformers knew that minor tweaks wouldn't work. To stop the slaughter, they had to completely change the geometry of the field. For years, a relatively unknown coach named John Heisman, yes, the man the Heisman Trophy is named after, had been writing letters begging the Rules Committee to adopt a radical, almost laughable idea. He argued that the only way to stop defenses from packing 11 men into a lethal, suffocating wall was to give them a reason to spread out. His solution? Legalize the forward pass. Let the boys throw the ball down the field. In the spring of 1906, the forward pass was legalized. There was too much pressure to change the game for Walter Camp and the traditionalists to stop it. But that didn't mean they couldn't smother it in bizarre restrictions. For example, if a pass was thrown and it hit the ground untouched, it was a turnover. If it was caught out of bounds, it was a turnover. If a team wanted to throw, the quarterback had to be 5 yards directly behind the center before they could try. But paired with another massive rule change, increasing the distance for a first down from 5 yards to 10 yards, the forward pass made its mark. Teams could no longer afford to just smash their heads against a wall for 2 yards of play. The threat of a pass, even a clumsy one, forced defenses to pull men off the line of scrimmage. Over time, the lethal, suffocating mass formations dissolved. The rules evolved, and football became the game of speed, strategy, and flight we know today. If you love history in the game of football, be sure to subscribe to the channel. This is our first video, with more on the way. Let us know what you'd like to see next. Thanks for watching.